I thought tonight we would talk about looping and how you can use a looper with your practicing. So to get us started off with, I'm on my Godin nylon string, and I'm going into my pedal board, and we're going to have a shot of my pedal board coming in here, and on our pedal board cam, and hopefully you will get an idea of what I'm doing through that. So it might be helpful let me just start. Let me just do one and you'll see. So I'm going to do, let's see, I don't have to plan this out. I'm just going to do a simple 4-bar chord progression, maybe a G to an E minor, maybe to an A minor, to a D. Let's see how that sounds. Something like... Okay, there you go, a little bit of looping. Let me kind of explain a little bit of the layers that I was going on to. You know, you can do so many fun things just to help you practice with a simple looper. And the looper that I'm using right here is just a TC Electronics Ditto looper. This is the X2, so it is stereo. They do have the original Ditto looper, which is just the 1 channel. This is the 2 channel here, and that's this big black pedal right here in the middle. So it's got 2 buttons on it. One of them is to start the loop, and the other one is to stop the loop, which is very helpful. All right, so you've got that going on. Now, the other pedals that I have here, let me just kind of go through them real quick. First of all, my guitar is going into this Silver Fishman here on the right side. And that is just doing a little bit of processing. So here's my guitar with nothing going on. All right. It does have a tuner, but I don't have that hooked up. It does have a compressor, but I don't have that hooked up. And then it's going into, it's winding its way around. And I think the next mono thing that happens is it hits this octave pedal over here. So I've got that set. Let me turn the octave pedal on. So now I've got that set to where it's going to give an octave below when I give a low note. But you'll notice once I get above to about, you know, once I get to about that G there, it stops giving the octave. That's the beautiful part of this, is that it only gives you the octave on these lower notes. Very helpful. Now, it'll also do, you know, an octave up, so forgive my reach here, but I'm going to get in here. And it can also give you an octave up, which that gets this sound. It's a little bit less usable. So it's a funky sound, but it's not really anything I can use in this sort of situation, so I generally don't use that. And then, so all that, my signal is mono through all that. Then it goes into this volume pedal. And then the volume pedal from there, it goes into the Strymon digital delay here. And what that is just giving me, when I turn that on, again, here's me with nothing. So when I turn on the Strymon delay, it's going to ping pong on either side. So that's the delay. Then it goes into this cloud burst, which is just a little bit of reverb, if you can hear it. Oh, let me turn on. So just a little bit of room delay there. And then the only other pedal here is this Walrus slower pedal. And what it does is it gives me a really super deep reverb, cavernous thing. So it sounds like this. That's a good deep one. Let me see if I... Hear all that trails going on there. Let's see what the red one is. So it almost kind of functions as a pad. It gets going so deep. So that's what that one does. Okay, so that's all of the pedals that I'm using. Now, it's not about the pedals. What it's about is you're able to lay down a chord progression, a track. Let's say you're trying to learn how to play blues or something, and you want to try and practice soloing. Okay, well, so let's do a little blues soloing. So here's the gig. I try and hit the beginning of the loop. I've got to be real precise on my tempo. So when I set that, when I initially start the loop, it's going to start recording. And then I have to be very specific when I want it to stop so that the loop is accurate. So let me see if I can get one going here on a blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. so that's my loop. It's a 12-bar blues. So I can stop it. Now it's still in there, so I can start it whenever I want to, but that's so I can practice. If I wanted to practice my blues, I don't have to create this elaborate, soundscape that I was doing earlier. I'm just using it to put a progression in. So it's still there, so if I wanted, I can start it again. To add a bass part to that, maybe I could do this. So now I've got the bass and the other guitar in there. That's one way to use a looper, to just jazz up your playing. Anytime you're trying to do a progression or a work on your soloing or something like that, usually, I do it all the time where I'll just kind of record myself into my phone or my iPad just to kind of remember the idea, and I'll play it back from that. Anytime you can do that, that's a really good, fun way to help you with your practicing. You got to get used to the looper a little bit, but it's a one fun task that you can do with that. Another thing that you can do with loopers is you can add, like I was doing at the beginning, where you're adding all of this stuff onto it. So let's do something maybe a little bit more rhythmic. I want to make sure when I start the loop that I'm right where I wanted to start, and I also want to make sure that I don't vary in my tempo. So I'm going to try and really specifically try and keep that at the same tempo. So I'm just do a little groove in G. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I lay the rhythmic part down first because I can always add stuff to the rhythmic part, but if I start with a more flowy part, then I'm going to lose my sense of tempo. Okay, so I'm going to take off my little octaver right there. Take that off for a second. Okay, I'll add a little punchy little line there. So I've got this in here now, so I'm going to try and add some chords to it. So let me add a few more chords. got all that going, and now I can solo. So it's kind of a G dominant sound. So I'm gonna solo in F. I'm gonna kind of give an F major 7th sound to it, and hear how that sounds. It still sounds a little undefined, so I'm going to add another bass line. I don't know if that's going to help, but we'll give it a shot. Okay, just for fun, let me just add a little lick here and there. Okay, so now I've got all of this in there. So if I wanted to practice different ideas for soloing, like I could practice over that G dominant, I could do if I could do a regular G dominant, that would be fun. So let's try that. So I'm basically playing in the key of C. So that was basically a C scale. What if I wanted to play maybe like an F major 7th sort of a sound, like F major 7th arpeggios? Maybe I could do a D minor arpeggio. What if I did, that kind of sounds a little funky. What if I did maybe a G blues, G minor pentatonic? That sounds better. There you go. There you go. Just some ideas. We have a couple of questions. If you do have a question, go ahead and put that in the chat there. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. Thomas Moore is asking, is the 2-button Ditto easier to use than the 1-button one? I have the 1-button one. I have the 1-button one as well. I've got 2 of them. I like the 2-button. I use them both, so I can't really say one of them is better than the other. The 2-button one gives me the ability to stop when I want it to stop. And that's just, it gives me, I can dedicate this one switch right there to just stopping the loop. On the single button one, it does well. It just doesn't give me as clean when I want to stop the loop. I find I have to, hit it twice and do all this sort of stuff, and it's a little bit tricky. So I've done solo jobs with them, and I've played with a loop, and it sounds great. But I like the 2-button one for 2 reasons. The reason, number one, was because you can program that 1 button to stop. The other reason is it's stereo. And so the reason I can do a stereo loop that you're hearing now is because this is in stereo and the single button one is not stereo. That's the only thing. Steve Vegas is saying, can you talk about the timing with the on-off on a looper? It seems really hard to get the timing right. Yes, the short answer is yes, that's the whole deal. It is tough to get that timing just right on that looper. What'll help you, Steve? At least it was what helps me is I get a metronome going. So here's my metronome. And if I'm going to do, let's say, a 4-bar loop of that tempo, and there's 4 beats for every bar. So I'm listening to that, trying to get where y'all can hear it. And I try and start let me erase this loop that's going on here, right here. And so I'm going to try and do exactly with 1 bar each for this. So I try and get right on the click. And I'm going to tap my first tap at the beginning. 1, 2, ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I want it to end. Ready, and. So I hit it right on the click. Now, I can turn this off. Now here's the problem. It's a good loop. I've got it right here, but it's a little hard to hear where those notes are at because I didn't put any subdivisions into it. So while it is accurate, I have big long spaces where it's not doing anything. So it's a little hard to find the loop. So I'm going to erase this one. I'm going to turn this click on again. And I'm going to add a little bit more subdivisions, and you'll hear how it changes. Okay, so I still got my same thing going. Now I'm going to add some subdivision. 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now it's easier to find because I've got more subdivisions in it. There was the loop point. I was just a hair off there. So you got to be really careful when you set the loop and when you stop the loop. I'm going to start it at the beginning of the measure that I'm trying to loop, and I want to click it right at the end of the last measure that I'm trying to loop. So basically, the first point of where I want it to start looping is where I click it off. But you're right, it does take some practice. And one thing that helps me is I'll just put on a metronome. That way I know I'm not varying the tempo. And I try and hit it exactly when those clicks come by, at the start and at the end, but I have to pay attention. Once you get that first loop in correctly, then everything else works because it's a set time. It's the first one that matters there. Keith is saying, how many types of loopers are there and uses? Hey, there's a gazillion type of loopers. There's a gazillion. And they do all sorts of different things and all that sort of stuff, and you can spend a lot of money on them. And here's my best advice. Don't do all that. If you haven't worked with one of them before, don't fall into the trap of buying this thing. It's got double, triple of this, and it can do this effect, and it's got 17 buttons. And no. You want something that's going to start a loop and stop a loop until you figure it out how it's going to go. Boss makes a good one. These little diddle loopers are good. This is the X2, but there's an X4 and all sorts of things. So you can get infinitely complex with it. I would encourage you not to do that if you're just starting with it. Just buy a simple looper and figure out how to use it, and then you can always upgrade there. But if you buy one that's really complicated, you'll lose yourself and get frustrated really easily with that. Shoot, I get frustrated, and I kind of know, basically how to work them, but I get frustrated when there's just so many different things going on. Felicia is asking, a little bit earlier, she had a question. Should I practice something I'm working on until I can play it smoothly? The short answer is yes. Yes, you practice it until you can play it smoothly. And if you slow it down as much as you need to in order to be able to play something smoothly and you're in control of. So it doesn't matter how slow it needs to be, just get it slow enough to where you're in control. If you're still not able to control your movements or when the chords are coming and things like that, then it's always going to be tricky for you when you get into your practice time. I just see kind of the same things happening all the time with practice. We should do a whole session on this sometime, but a a lot of times we just don't have enough patience when we are practicing. We just want to get through things. Let me get through things. Let me get through this. Let me get through this. And you're never gonna get it. You've got to throttle your mind down to where you can not be in a hurry. If you've got a mind that is rushed, frazzled, frustrated, it doesn't learn. So it just scientific. I'm not getting, whatever. This is science. You don't learn when you're all frazzled. So you got to learn to relax, and especially when you're trying to do your practice time, just allow yourself to make some mistakes. Take things as slow as you need to be able to do what you need to do to get your fingers to cooperate. I think we just wake up and we think, gosh, we should be able to progress faster than this. And my answer to this is always no, it does not happen fast. It does not happen fast. So you got to pace yourself. A lot of times we'll go 3 days, and if we think we haven't gotten it by the third 15-minute practice session, that we're never going to get it. I said, well, you will never get it if you give up after 3 times. You got to decide in yourself that you're going to get it, and that's the first start with it. Chris is asking, does looping with a modeling amp cause any issues? No. Basically, you want your looper as the very last thing out of your effects before it hits the amp. So you don't want to put your looper first before all your effects. You want to put your looper last, the last thing your guitar hits before it goes off to your amp. That's generally how you do it. That way all of your effects and everything are already able to be in the loop. And Brian is asking, do you have an opinion on the band creator and looper trio? Man, you guys know more about this than I do. I'm just doing basic loops is what I'm doing. It's cool. It's cool to have these other effects and things in there, but let me put just one little caveat on there. I would rather play the progression in there rather than have some drum machine or something like that play some sort of a progression that's kind of what I want it to be. I would rather just do it. If I'm just practicing, I would rather just play the progression to myself. That way I know I've got it. So while all the bells and whistles of extra drum machines and bass loops and tracks and things like that are fun, and if you want to do that, then wonderful, go for it. I have found that a simple looper is all that I need to help me practice. And it's a lot of fun. I'll get in here and just start messing with loopers and create all kinds of wonderful, crazy things. And it's enjoyable for me to work with. Steve Vegas is saying, Steve, if you wanted the looper solo to be a different effect than the accompaniment, how would you do it with a modeling amp and no other pedals? Oh, well, you're stuck. You're stuck there, boss. Unless you put, wait a minute, you could put your looper in your effects loop of your amp. Which may allow some of you to lay a loop down and then change the effects on your amp and then lay that in as well. That may be a possibility to be able to do that if you run it through the effects loop in your amp. Kind of out from the amp into the looper, out from the looper, back into the effects, send in on the amp. That may be one way you can do that. Other than that, you can't. It's just kind of a straight line. So you're going to get, if you don't have any effects other than in your amp, the effects loop, I think, would be the only way that you could really do that. Line to that. Okay, so we got that in there. can add some other little chordal parts in there. you go. Hey, keep up the great work in your learning, and we will see you guys next time. We won't have a live lesson next week, but we'll be on the week after that. Take care.